chairman of the panel, Mr. Amit Agnihotri, Edwin Moses, Samuel Sudhakar, esteemed the directors and the principals and anchors of management education in the country. Edwin was repeatedly mentioning that by the time I walk out of this room, he might get killed. But I believe, irrespective of whatever you're going to do to him, I definitely believe that he has infused life in all of us by a very, very inspirational talk. So we have got a very interesting theme today: changing corporate expectations from MBH. And whenever I walk into an MBA institution, management institution, the architects of this institution, the directors, principals, always ask me why the corporate expectations keep changing all the time. Well, that's the reality of life. And what I'm going to say today might change tomorrow. So don't hold me accountable for what I'm saying today, but that's the reality of life. So let's understand what's happening, what's changing. I'll give you some interesting examples. If you talk about the 1980s, which professionals were in great demand? Who would typically end up becoming a CEO of an organization? Is the production guy, isn't it? In a manufacturing setup, the guy who had expertise in production would go on to become CEO of the company. In the 90s, it was the finance professionals who had the best chance of ending up as a CEO. And in the 2000s, it was the technology professional. So that talks about the changing trend, how technology is at the center stage. Amit was talking about blockchain, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of that. The guys who have got expertise in technology started ruling the world. But that has changed again. It's not the technology professional which is at the center stage anymore. Who is at the center stage today? Please understand, you can buy technology today if you have the money. You don't really have to have a technologist. If you have the money, you can buy technology. You can buy finance modules. You can buy all kinds of expertise. So the technology expert is not at the center stage today. Who is at the center stage? There is one thing, ladies and gentlemen, that you cannot buy. Organizations cannot buy today. Organizations have the money, but they cannot buy one thing. They cannot buy a motivated employee. An employee who will walk into the organization every day, who will remain inspired and motivated throughout the day, who is supposed to produce X, will probably produce X. If 500 people walk into the organization every day, you would expect that they would produce 500X. But unfortunately today what's happening? We end up getting 250X, 200X. How can we make that 500X 750X? The professional who can enable that, who can inspire that, is on great demand today. I believe very strongly the HR professionals, the L&D professionals, the learning and development professionals, who can probably enable people to stay motivated, stay inspired, contribute the best, would be on great demand. And all of you, because you are running the centers of learning, probably can contribute to that significantly. What else is happening in our part of the world, in the corporate sector? In the corporate sector, you find two kinds of creatures. You would find the elephants and the mosquitoes. The elephants are large organizations, very structured. Adrian was talking about policies and procedures, age-old policies and procedures, structures, hierarchical structures, and very slow in moving around. The mosquitoes are small, tiny, but agile, very swift, can move quickly. The mosquitoes are making the lives of the elephants miserable today. The large elephants, they can't do anything about it. The mosquito can just come from nowhere, pierce into the elephant, and then fly away. The elephant just can't do anything about it. That's what is happening today. Large organizations struggling to move progress, small startups coming from nowhere, bringing in a new technology, which can bring about a new way of doing things and bringing about a disruption in the field, and the age-old large players are clueless about it. So that's something which is very interesting that's happening in the industry. It's important, before we go to management education, it's important for all of us to understand what's happening out there. Large organizations are melting away. Large structures are getting broken down. They're trying to become leaner, meaner. They're trying to see if they can become lean and mean, and they don't have to remain large organizations. Hierarchical structures are breaking down. Organizations which are adapting to that are surviving and thriving. Those who are not, they're just perishing, they're going away. Organizations from machines are trying to transform into living organisms, into living creatures. Organizations do have life, they're not machines. Organizations in the past, or even many organizations today, continue to remain machines. Structure, methods, policies, procedures, lack of flexibility, what does it make it? They end up becoming machines. But now, the new age organizations, the next gen organizations are trying to become living creatures. They want to become, living entities which can breathe, which has a life, which can engage, which can talk, which can communicate, and so on. So the structures are breaking down, the boxes and the lines are disappearing. What is becoming important is action, execution, focusing on outcomes. That's the shift that's happening today. So in the process, the center of power is shifting from large organizations to anybody for that matter. I just learned about a homeopath who lives in Indore, and he has his patients all over the world today. He figured it out that he can use the Facebook Messenger as a tool to prescribe medicines to patients all over the world. So his patients, his customers are not restricted to Indore anymore. He has patients all over the world. He could just figure it out that there is a tool called Facebook, leveraging technology beautifully, and then today he has patients all over the world. So see how the center of power is shifting from money, power, influence to knowledge. Anybody who has knowledge, expertise, and who knows how to use technology to disseminate his knowledge, he or she can actually rule the world. That's how the startups are really thriving. They may not have the backing of money, power, political influence, or any of this, but they can even become successful. The power center is shifting to knowledge. That's what is happening in the industry today. So when these changes are happening all around in the industry, and when organizations are struggling to keep pace with the change, all that we expect from you, ladies and gentlemen, is empathy. So we are struggling to survive. As Jim Collins said, that majority of the Fortune 500 companies, they just disappeared from the Fortune 500 list. So when organizations are struggling to remain there, to remain relevant, all that we need from you is empathy. While a lot is talked about what is not going right in management educational institutions, I would like to look at this as an opportunity. when organizations are struggling, when organizations need help from you, you have a great opportunity to support organizations. And in a country like India, where millions of people are getting into professional education every year, where millions of young men and women are getting into the employable age, you have a great opportunity. You have a phenomenal opportunity. You have a huge market. I don't see any reason as to why 1,000 management institutions end up in 300 and 300 in 30. Why should that happen? Opportunity is plenty. If you can provide the right, if you can create the right ecosystem, if you provide the right opportunities to the youngsters, if you understand the changing expectations of the industry, then you are there. You are right there to make the best use of the opportunity that is before you. So, what's really not going right today? There are a few things which are not going right in the management education ecosystem. And the first and foremost, is while industry is expecting its workforce to become comfortable with discomfort, to become comfortable with ambiguity, we are preparing our management students to lead a comfortable life. So if you ask any young man who aspires to get into an IIM, and if you ask, why do you want to get into this premier management institution, the response would be, I want to get into a comfortable job, get a handsome salary, and so on. So we're preparing our next generation to lead a comfortable life, but the industry is all about discomfort. It's about ambiguity. It's about volatility. It's about uncertainty. Are we preparing our younger generation to deal with that ambiguity, to deal with that discomfort, to deal with that volatility, to deal with that uncertainty? Probably we are not. Are we providing enough opportunities for young people to come and experience the real life, experience what the work environment is all about? Probably we're not doing enough of that. Lack of quality faculty is a problem. Lack of research is another problem. There's not enough focus in research and management education, in engineering education, in professional education. The focus is only on delivering education, but there is not enough focus on research. How can we turn it around? I think I see there's a great opportunity for us to turn it around. The first thing, I think what we can start doing differently is bring in experiential learning in our management education. Edwin talked about experiential learning. Amit did talk about it. So we can really bring about opportunities to students where experience is embedded into our education curriculum. And as experience is not enough. There's a new concept called learning agility today, which is very popular. And the learning agility is all about going through an experience, learning from your experience, applying that learning in new situations. Every moment in our life we go through some experience, but do we really learn from that? Many of us don't learn. So and then for us to learn, we need skill, we also need motivation. Skill is not enough. So ability to learn is not enough. We also need to have the motivation to learn. And that's what learning agility is all about. And that can be facilitated by opportunities, by creating opportunities to go through experience and then providing opportunities to young people to reflect. Nadal, the very famous tennis player, when he was picked up by his coach in the school, he was about 5 years old, and his coach later on admitted, he confessed that Nadal was not the best tennis player in the school. I wouldn't have picked him up normally. But the reason I picked him up because one of the guys who was selected in the group that was selected, he decided to drop out. So then I picked up Nadal. And Nadal went on to become one of the best tennis players in the world. And in one of the interviews, he was questioned, how did you really become one of the greatest tennis players in the world of all times? He said, I do one thing. Every time I go out to play, when I serve, in between my serves, I keep bouncing the ball for a long time. I just keep bouncing it. And sometimes the referee has penalized me for taking too long to serve. And do you guys know why do I do that? I reflect. In between my serves, I keep reflecting. What went well in my last shot? What did not go well? What I need to do differently when I'm playing my next shot? Reflection. And that reflection really makes him stronger every time he goes out to play. But in our education system, and even also in the corporate side of the, there is no time for reflection. Because we believe that the mind of a student is an empty vessel that we can just fill with curriculum. But we forget that the mind is a candle that has to be ignited. It's not an empty vessel that has to be filled with knowledge. So we have to create opportunities for our youngsters in our education system to go through experience and to reflect on that experience. And through the reflection, the real learning will happen. If there is no reflection, there is not going to be any learning. Multi-specialty discipline. I think universities, educational institutions, management educations need to adopt multidisciplinary education. No matter whatever the students are learning, which stream they are in, but we have to ensure that there is multidisciplinary education. Most good universities have already started adopting it. Imagine a doctor in an operation theater. Is it good enough for him to know his subject, medicine, or if he's a super specialist on spinal injuries, is it good enough to know that domain? He also needs to know instrumentation. There are loads of instruments which are used in the operation theater today. And he has to learn instrumentation as well. A specialist in instrumentation also needs to know about medicine. Otherwise, they cannot really work together. They cannot collaborate. A student of economics also needs to know technology. Otherwise, he cannot get a job in an IT organization. This doctor, the homeopath in Indore, also knew how to use technology, though he was an expert in medicine. So multidisciplinary specialization is another important area which the management institutions, educational institutions need to focus on. Create incubation centers where corporates can come and participate. They can encourage startups to thrive within your campus. I would like to ask you one question. Will you be willing to relook at your qualification for professors or faculty members in your institutions? Are you willing to sacrifice qualification and then look at people with experience from the industry? I guess they can do a better job. I don't know whether the system will allow that, whether the law will allow that, but are you really thinking out of the box? Are you prepared to go out and then hire industry experts? They may not be PhDs, they may not be MBAs, but they may be really experienced people with real life experience. Are you prepared to take that bet? I would like to throw this challenge at all of you. I see a great opportunity for the management institutions to break the barrier. And I also see a great opportunity between industry and management institutions to work together. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we need each other. You need us, and we need you as well. We can definitely build an ecosystem where we can build the synergy, and then we can together create a better India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed.